Welcome to the Scotch Malt Whisky Society Australia. My name is Matt Bailey. I'm the National Ambassador for the Society here in Australia. I'm really excited to film this for you, just for our YouTube channel here. We'll probably put it on Facebook as well. If you've just received your 3 dram pack, you're in the right place. 3 drams from just joining the SMWS, joining this amazing community of whisky enthusiasts, like-minded lovers of good spirit. So I really appreciate you tuning in. Come for an adventure with me and let's explore what this is all about. To get started, what I'd recommend doing is getting your 3 dram pack, opening it up, maybe finding yourself a water jug or a water pipette, and finding yourself an appropriate whiskey glass. When I say appropriate, we're talking about a whiskey glass that's best for appreciation and understanding and enjoyment of whiskey. You can use a tumbler, however, you can use whatever glass you like, but I recommend using our Society whiskey tulips. They're great for nosing and tasting whiskey, and then get yourself a water carafe whilst you're on the side as well. You've just received your 3 dram pack, you want to learn what it's all about. I'll start us off by telling you a little bit about the history of the Society. It was founded in 1983 by a man named Pip Hills, who was a mountaineer and explorer, who, right in the boom of malted whiskey being a blended whiskey product mostly, he came into these distilleries, asked them for single casks of whiskey to be bottled and enjoyed by his new syndicate, which ended up becoming the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. The distilleries thought he was mad. We still think he's mad, but we get to enjoy whiskey now straight from the cask strength as it was intended. So what we've done for this pack is we've picked out 3 very diverse drams that we get to share and enjoy with you. So the Society, closing in on 40 years after its foundation, is still to this day the world's leading whiskey club. We've got 22 plus branches around the world, 30-something thousand members, and you're now a member of a like-minded community of fantastic flavour appreciators and those who like to go on a spirited journey. What we do in Australia is we host events, dinners, tastings, all sorts of things going on where we get to explore whiskey together as a club. That's what makes us different. We get to explore these amazing single casks that have all been panel approved for the Society from the biggest range of distilleries on earth. Let's delve right into the pack. Let's see what's inside and let's have a taste of what's going on in here. So open up your pack and you'll find first a black envelope. In here are your full tasting notes. These tasting notes have all been written by our expert tasting panel. You'll see 3 cards in there where you get to explore all the tasting notes and all the details for every whiskey. We list all the details on every whiskey that we produce. The cask number, the price per bottle, the name of the whiskey, the region, the cask type, how many years it's been in oak, the date it was distilled, the outturn, which refers to the total number of bottles yielded from that single cask, and the ABV, the alcohol by volume, the strength, and the Australian allocation, how many bottles we got for the Australia branch. And then underneath that we've got the full tasting note. In that, you have all the details you'll need to know about the flavour of this whiskey. You'll notice there's one thing, however, missing from these labels and from the bottles, and that is the name of the distillery. We don't list the distillery names on the bottles. That is two reasons behind that. One is that we like you to explore the flavour and what's going on in the spirit rather than being influenced by the marketing of that particular distillery's brand. So when we pick up the first dram, 68.49, a day at the fun fair, it is a single cask whiskey from a Highland Whiskey distillery in Scotland from a recharred hogshead at 58.9%. I haven't even said the distillery name and I'm going to do my best not to. However, it's in our spicy and sweet flavour profile. I'll talk more about flavour profiles in just a moment. Let's pour a dram of that together, shall we? I recommend pouring at least half your sample. There's enough in each sample for you to share around. And just pour that into your glass. And I recommend just giving it a light swirl. If you're new to whiskey, this might come in handy. If you've been a Society member for years and you've got this box for referring, then you already know what you're doing. Swirl that around the glass a little bit. Just coat the edges. You don't need to give it a vigorous shake. It's not a wine glass. You don't need to aerate the whiskey per se. You just need to coat the sides of the glass just for maximum enjoyment. Just let that swirl around the glass. If you're worried about tipping it out like I was just doing, then just put your glass on its side and turn it like that a couple of times. Now when we first nose it, just come close to the nose, but don't dig your nose straight into the glass. There's no need to go all the way into the glass. You'll probably burn your nostrils out a little bit there. Just come close to the top here and see what we smell there. I get immediate sort of barley sugars. I can immediately smell that nutty distillate that Distillery 68 is renowned for. That's a fun nose. I mean, it does say a day at the fun fair. Maybe it feels like we're at the fun fair nosing this. It's a very good whiskey to start with as well. Spicy and sweet, I definitely get that spice in there. I mean, that's not unusual for this distillery. So let me explain that coding system whilst we're enjoying that first nose. 68 in this case means it's the 68th distillery to join the Society's numbering system. It all started with cask 1.1. And when Pip Hills acquired that cask, he called it whiskey 1.1. And in the following casks, 1.2, 1.3, they started getting interesting names to describe the flavour. And then he got the second distillery on board, 2. Distillery 2, cask 1. Then distillery 2, cask 2, so 2.2 and onwards. So you can see where the numbering system comes into it. The first number is the distillery code, the second number is the cask ID. That's a lovely nose. Bit of candy floss. Sort of fairy floss kind of notes coming through. Just delightful. But it is 58.9. I do recommend trying it neat without any water added, at least for your first sip. Let that coat your mouth. If you find that initial sort of ethanol burn to be a little bit too much, what I recommend you could do is grab your pipette or your water glass or I sometimes even use a teaspoon in a glass of water if I don't have a water jug or a pipette. There's no rules here, you can just do what you like. But then I'll just add just a few drops of water into that. Just to bring the dilution down. I'll normally add about 5 or 6 drops of water just to really sort of open it up a bit. Now that's really coming alive. I prefer that you get your whiskey undiluted so you can add your water rather than having something that's bottled at say 40% that's been bottled for that reason, for taxation, not taste. And have another sip now with the water. Just lovely. Just lovely. Now I get that sweetness straight away on the palate. That's really enjoyable. That's fantastic. So that's called Day at the Fun Fair, and that's where we all going to start with this 3 dram pack. I hope this could possibly be your first exploration into Society whiskey with that very dram, which I find very exciting because that's a very exciting whiskey. And it's 9 years old out of a recharred hogshead, a type of cask that has had an extra treatment to sort of liven it up, give a different profile, in this case a spicy and sweet flavour profile. I said I'd talk a little bit more about our tasting profiles, our flavour profiles as we went along. I'm going to do that right now. We used a 12 flavour profile approach, which you can see on screen now. These flavour profiles are a first entry point for you to understand what flavours to expect from a whiskey. It might be spicy and sweet, like where we just were. It could be light and delicate. It could be peated. It could be deep, rich and dried fruits. The cask does not determine the flavour profile. Neither does the age, neither does the ABV, neither does the distillery. The flavour profile is separate to all of it. It's a standalone point for us to understand the flavour of what to expect from a whiskey. I've seen refill hogsheads in the deep, rich and dried fruits category, just as I've seen sherry butts in the young and sprightly. There's no rules to this, and just as we see peated whiskey from all over the world now, not just exclusively Isla, you can see peated categories across all sorts of distilleries in Scotland and indeed the entire world that we bottle from. Alright, now that you've had a taste of that 68, how about we move on to something completely different? Let's pour dram number 2 in your pack, 39.199 Polishing Melons. Now this is a very, very special whiskey. This is a 30-year-old whiskey that was distilled on the 16th of October, 1989. I want you to think about what you were doing in that year. Were you alive? Were you in school? Were you working somewhere? What were you doing in 1989? Just to think that you're drinking a piece of what I like to call liquid history. Something that is a bit of a time capsule, if you like. Now this is what we call from our Vaults collection. This is a sweet, fruity and mellow whiskey from our flavour profile. And it gets its black label, its copper trim and its special black box to commemorate the fact that it is something quite rare from our archives. We have a few different ranges at the Society, which I'll show here now. We have the traditional white labels that we do for most releases. Then we have the premium livery ones, which we see from time to time. And then even rarer are our Vaults collection releases like this 30-year-old single cask. I decided to include this in the 3 dram pack just to give you a taster of what we do. We've started with a 9-year-old spicy and sweet whiskey. We're moving to a 30-year-old sweet, fruity and mellow one. Distillery 39 is an absolute classic distillery, renowned for its profile, renowned for its deep, lovely fruit notes, lots of pear drops, that classic Speyside influence, if you like. So it was initially in an ex-bourbon hogshead, then that entire cask was then filled into a second fill toasted hogshead. So it's had 2 casks along the way. It is still technically a single cask whiskey. It's the one spirit from one cask going to another. In this case, it had an additional 3 years maturation in a second fill toasted hogshead, which has brought the proof down to 49% on the dot. It's still natural cask strength, like everything we do at the Society. Cask strength, single cask, panel approved, full flavored whiskey. Oh, have a nose of that. The fruits just leap out of the glass. Tropical fruits. Let's have a look at our tasting card for that one. Beeswax polish, I'll agree with that. Scented candles, soft melons, poached pear. The thing with the tasting notes are, you read them and sometimes they seem a little bit funny, and you might say to yourself, I'm not getting all of those tasting notes. You're not supposed to either. These are the tasting notes from the entire expert tasting panel. Our tasting panel do a lot of work in the UK in refining their palates, in building these profiles together and writing these detailed notes for you to understand. These notes are a part of the panel's full knowledge of coming in of all those notes together. So it's not just one person saying this is a group of people. And so it's culminating all their notes together. We see that as quite important, and we see that as a step into what we do of providing the flavour of the whiskey. We also do a lot of work with the Scotch Whisky Research Institute and the Edinburgh Whisky Academy. We do a lot of work with these bodies in growing the knowledge base of the Society, in growing the knowledge base of our whiskey and understanding everything that we do. That's really important to us. But back to the whiskey. What happens when a whiskey gets 30 years of age? Is it better than a younger whiskey? No, it's just different. I try to stress this because they just carry different flavour aromas, and sometimes you might be in the mood for something young and sprightly, you might be in the mood for something old and dignified. Don't let the age statement drive what you think is quality, let flavour determine what you like. We've already weeded out what we don't deem as quality for the Society. That's what an expert tasting panel does. Being able to actually taste these, we're knowing that this has already been filtered out by our expert tasting panel as being fantastic. And it's been worked on by Ewan Campbell, Kai Evelo and the team in the spirits team in the UK in providing these amazing spirits just exclusively to members of the Society. Of course, there's all the other benefits of being a member, of course, like our events, our Unfiltered magazine, our Outturn, our exclusive offers, our bundle deals, everything that we do, including education and including these kind of videos. Let's have a taste of that 39.199 polishing melons. My general rule of thumb is to not add water to really old whiskies like this. You can give it a go, but sometimes they're already so delicate and so nuanced at that lower ABV from the Angel Share, already stealing a fair bit of that out of that cask. I would just add maybe 2 or 3 drops and just see how that carries. Again, give that light swirl, let the water integrate slightly. Don't need to stick your nose all the way in the glass. And smaller sips that cover and coat the tongue are going to be far more preferable to shotting it back, especially when you've got a whiskey that's as rare as this. And this is a $710 bottle in a free 3 dram pack. So we really hope you're enjoying this as part of your first steps into the Society, or if you're a referrer, you just get to enjoy some good drams with me. All right, let's have a look at our third and final whiskey in the lineup for today. This is 10.201 Panel Punch of Peat Smoke. Pop the cork on that. Even that satisfying first sound of the cork. You can pop open your sample of this. I'd say pour yourself 15, 20 mils of that sample. Have a nose and taste of what it's all about here. Now, we're heading into a very, very different territory again here. This is a 6-year-old whiskey in our peated category. We have 3 peated categories: lightly peated, peated, and heavily peated. One could argue that oily and coastal often means a little bit of peat as well, but that's a kind of different, often coastal and oily style of whiskey rather than straight up peated whiskies like these. So this has had 5 years, this whiskey has had 5 years in an ex-bourbon wood, and then has been filled into a second fill Moscatel hogshead. So it's an additional maturation of just a year, just to polish it with a little bit of sweetness on top of that peat. With peated whiskey, generally speaking, younger peated whiskey will leap out of the glass with strong phenols, with all those peat aromas filling the room. They peat the barley at the beginning of the process. That's where the peat comes into this process before even any mashing, any fermentation, any distilling, even maturation. So the peat is right at the start of the production process of making this whiskey. This is an Isla Distillery built in 1881 and is an absolute landmark of Isla, of the Western Hebrides. And after only 6 years, this is a very peated whiskey. It could almost border into the heavily peated category. The other piece of advice I give for those interested in peated whiskey is to not pay attention too much to ppm numbers. They don't really mean much in the production of whiskey. They're measured at different points and they just confuse as to what the flavor is. Focus more on the flavor, focus more on the tasting notes, and you have a lot more fun with this kind of stuff. Straight away I'm getting that sort of like strawberry, toffee notes, smoky toffee, bit of tarry rope, bit of steamship action here. That's an exciting whiskey. I'm gonna have a taste first neat. This one is at 60.2%, so it's crossed over the 60% mark. Natural cask strength, not watered down. Wow. Oh wow, that is definitely much more of a peated whiskey on the palate. Sweet on the nose, peat on the palate. That's lovely. Bit of smoky fish on there. I'm gonna add a few drops of water to this. It is 60%. It could probably really benefit from a few. I've been quite generous there. Some people don't like pipettes. I'm not a huge fan. I do like generally adding water via just the water jug, which I'm gonna try and do here without too much haphazard. Remember though, with water, you can't take it out once you've put it in. So it's better to tread carefully with water rather than overdoing it. That's lovely with a few drops. That really opens it up, a bit more pork belly. Burnt sticks, it's like fresh bonfire if you like, starting a bonfire. That's just remarkable. Well, I really want to thank you so much for being a part of this 3-dram tasting set. You've got 3 drams here to enjoy at your leisure. I hope you've learned a little bit about how to enjoy them, a little bit about the society, and I hope you can come on this journey with us over the next career of your whiskey enjoyment and get to enjoy all the events both in person and online and all the things that we do with our members to explore the full extent of the society. If you're not already a member of our Facebook group, it's a fantastic community on Facebook, just the Scotch Malt Whisky Society Australia. Look at the group, jump in, have a discussion, tell us what you think of your 3-dram set, tell us what you think, how they taste, write up your own tasting notes if you like. That's kind of the fun of it. And in the meantime, I hope to see you at one of our events. I hope to see you at one of our virtual tastings, which are coming up, of course, over the next few months between now and the end of the year, of course. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.